donation in the become a member. If you have questions about that, you can answer. Hey everybody online, thanks for bearing with us for the regular check-in rooms here today. But we do have this Katherine Krumwiede, who I oh gosh, I wasn't gonna say this, but who I credit with teaching me to walk. Publicly. Anyway, but you're here and yeah, let us know if you check this stuff, people check it. Yes. Oh, they mentioned that audio. So once you get started with it. Okay, good.
I want to thank you all for coming this evening. It's really great to be back at the Urban to teach one of my favorite classes on promoting breast health. And I am an acupuncturist by trade. That was my first holistic health love. And then I took these drugs, 3 things that were related to how significantly changed my herbal practice because now study the Chinese herbs. I use almost exclusively the Western herbs because I can read them and enjoy them. And celebrated my 18th anniversary of being an acupuncture. But tonight we are going to learn all sorts of ways to promote our breast health. Because October is just too full of breast cancer awareness. We really need to change it to breast health awareness. I think I would give much way to use that one. But our breasts are very unique structures. So they're considered an organ system, but they're an organ system with a medical specialty, like what the heart and the liver, lymph, and kidneys have. And they're an organ that's not mature at birth, so they don't fully mature until after pregnancy and lactation. And they're unprotected. All our other organs have a nice set of ribs to protect them, but our breasts are out here without any sort of protection, and they're under constant hormone influence. And so that we'll be talking more about the hormones in the second half of the presentation. But the first half we're going to talk about. So the breasts are full of lymph structures, which remove the toxins and pathogens. But we need to know how to best keep the lymph moving, all the things that stress it. So the key to breast health is being aware of all the various factors that cause disease and then avoiding them as much as possible, and then implementing many health practices. So now the lymphatic system has been called our garbage disposal system, which I think is really crass. It's really a beautiful, elegant system. So I have renamed it to the keeper of the river of water, or the river of life. I think that sums up all of its roles much better. Because the lymph supports both the immune system and the cardiovascular system. And it acts more as an inspector or a security officer to check out the blood, like are there things that shouldn't be in there, and if so, then they remove them from the blood and the lymph, and then it'll eventually get removed, and they can handle an infection right on the spot. It's more all the lymph nodes in our body. But the word lymph actually comes from lympha, which means connected to water. So that's what inspired my renaming of the system. And the lymph it's a real watery fluid, but it's actually formed of the blood through the capillaries. I've told this before. But once the blood gets to the capillary level, some extra will secrete out, and so the lymph slurps that and it goes into the vessels, and it does its inspecting. So with the lymph system, there's many parts to it. So first we have the vessels that captured at the capillary level, but then the vessels just kind of get bigger and more complex as you go up the body. only flows in one direction, and that's always up toward the heart. So it has one-way valves on it, it cannot flow the opposite way. And that's kind of important for a few of the techniques that we're going to do. And I want to talk about the nodes then. So there's 600 to 700 nodes. And they're located more at our joints, because the lymph doesn't have a system to help keep it moving. We need exercise or breathing in order to do it. So it makes sense that the lymph are at the joints to spur that lymph through. And the nodes are more like little spongy nuts, kind of like a lymphoma. And so, if you've ever seen the picture of the lymph, it looks just scattered everywhere and everything, but heavy underneath the armpits, lots of lymph vessels in the breast, and then so where our limbs attach to our trunk is probably the richest amount. So the same with the inguinal area, tons of nodes there, as well as our ankles, our toes all have lymph. And so after the vessels collect that blood and it works up and it goes through the nodes are where the infection fighting part enters the lymph. So the lymphocytes and the monocytes will enter the blood there then to check out what's in there. And so lots of special structures too associated with the lymph. We often think of the spleen. The spleen is most well known for recycling the red blood cells, but it also produces lymphocytes. The thymus makes T cells, which stands for thymus lymphoid cells. I never knew what the T stood. So the thymus makes that. Adenoids are sort of like another tonsils, but the tonsils are one of our first lines of defenses for anything we breathe or eat. And then malts are mucose-associated lymphoid tissue. And so there's mucus associated. So in the lungs and in the digestive system, we have that protective mucus layer because mucus's role in the body is to protect. We often think of it as a nuisance when we have cold because we're spewing it everywhere. But say, even when it's really cold out, you go outside in the cold, you come in and then your nose runs. Well, when you go out in the cold, your body produces that mucus to protect the nasal passages. And then when you go in, it's like it melts out. So it really is a protective thing. It's just if it gets to be too much, it can get pathogenic, like with a cough. But so those mouth areas, so there's a lot of lymph tissue in your guts and in your lungs. And then the cisterna chyli, which I love that. It sounds like kind of like a drag name. But it's just, it's one of the abdominal lymph things that's like a little sac. And the bones also make lymphocytes, but clearly there's no lymph in the bones. It's too hard for that, but they produce them too. And that's all. So just in general, the whole idea is keep the lymph moving up and out, because the easiest way to tell if your lymph isn't moving is you'll have swelling. Like if you take your socks off at night and you have a big indent, it means the socks constricted that lymph, because not the nodes, because the nodes are a little deeper, but the lymph in general runs all along our peripheral nervous system. So it's really just right underneath the skin. So even the slightest constriction can stop it from flowing. So we're going to be talking about the bras because they are a big lymph constrictor. So we're going to go next into the let it flow. There's various things that cause the lymph to be constricted. So emotions are a big one. We don't think of, because the emotions impact our body. But one of the biggest things is bottling up resentment and anger, because in Chinese medicine, the liver meridian has an internal branch that goes right straight through the breast. And the liver is meant to keep our qi moving smoothly. And when our chi is moving smoothly, everything. So that really can impact, just the emotions can impact the breast too. Now we'll get to the really important part of freeing the girls. So, because bras, so they not only, so if you take your bra off and your breasts are sore and you have big indents, it's like you have a whole bunch of lymph sitting in your breasts. And that lymph is full of toxins and pathogens and all that. You do not want that hanging out in your breast. And plus the bra cuts off all your meridians, like just cuts them in. So if your bra does not leave any indents and it doesn't, your breasts don't hurt afterwards, that's the best, well, other than not wearing a bra. I haven't been able to wear bras since I started teaching this class. But I think part of that's psychological. So try to avoid, and then underwears are the biggest offender because they just cause all sorts of inflammation in your bones. So the last bra I wore, I removed the underwires, and it is like construction material. And this is performance against it. So best case scenario, to minimize the time you spend wearing a bra. On the resources sheet, I wrote 7 different companies that are supposed to have less impact on your lymph. They're not as tight fitting, go broader bands. And being that I don't wear a bra, I have to do layering, which is fine in the winter. It's a little harder in the summer to get away with that. But really, evaluate your bra situation. Because you don't want that lymph in there. And also with that heavy amount of nodes in our underarms, you want to minimize underarm shaving as well, because that's really kind of rough on the lymph, which is just underneath your skin, but also impact the nodes. So just try to minimize it or eliminate it if possible. And so with exercise and mindful breathing are great ways to keep that pumping motion, to keep the lymph moving. And with exercise, frequency is much more important than intensity. It doesn't need to be hard, going for a walk, hiking, whatever you really enjoy is what you want to do the most. And with the mindful breathing, because that's like when we're sleeping at night, just our breathing all night long is what keeps the lymph moving. But I think during the day, so much of us are under high stress because we fill our days pretty full. We've got traffic, we've got all sorts of obligations. So we tend to just breathe up in our chest. That doesn't do much for the lymph. You really need to bring it down. So even if you take a little break, you want to invite your breath down to your lower abdomen. Because I know for years I had a hard time taking a deep breath. It's like it doesn't go anywhere. It's stuck here. And then my Qigong teacher said, well, just invite your breath to your lower abdomen. And it makes a world of difference. It's like a little slide. It just goes right down there. And then it relaxes. Where if you just try to, it gets all stuck. Invite it. So we're going to do a few moves where you'll be joining me with it. Oh, so now we're coming to fluffing already. So fluffing the girls it is such a simple thing. It is so powerful for keeping the lymph moving. This was actually developed by an oncology nurse. And there's a brochure too. I have brochures. And so what we're going to do, so the men will have to sit this one out, but you just cup your, like, it's like a pillow, you like fluffing a pillow. So you just put your hands under your breast and fluff them 10 times. And what this does is you get that nice direct release of lymph. Because one of my patients lives a very toxic-free existence, but she went to visit her mom, who had those air fresheners in every single outlet. And so when she got home, her breasts were so incredibly tender and sore, and she was kind of freaking out. So she asked me what to do, and I told her to fluff. And in 2 days, all that lymph had been able to drain out and made it tender or sore anymore. So it's pretty powerful. And what I like too, because it's so hands-on, is that you get to know your breasts. Because I never did those breast exams because I didn't want to. Not rational, but you have a question? So, it's still a little bit. It's not there. Would it be any benefit to them to do of that? There's a couple other things that talk about that men can do, but some men do have enlarged breasts, so for them, buffing would be important. And some men do wear bras too, for various reasons. So they shouldn't be tight either. So the fluffing, but also with the fluffing, you get to know your breasts. And so women who are still menstruating, they'll be able to feel the difference in your breasts because they'll get heavier at different parts of your cycle. But then you'll be able to detect changes too, because if you do this every day, so I do it in the morning before I get dressed, and then I do it when I get ready for bed. So you can tell, like, say if they're heavier for some reason, it's like, well, was I exposed to something? And like one day we got down a tree, so that chainsaw is pretty toxic, and I could tell it in my breast, like I could feel that lymph stuck there. So really a nice way to know what's more your normal and if anything is impacting them. And with so I don't actually do breast massage online because I fluff and I do it on breast bone, but breast massage too is very, very effective because that's specific techniques to really invigorate the lymph to go and drain out the nodes. And I put a site on your reference sheet of a place to go that would have various techniques, and then just find one that feels good for you or that you like to do. It's part of a ritual. What's in the breast? So if we turn to page 2, we've got a variety of choices for breastbone. So I make one, and I did bring some tonight if anybody's interested in. So the one I make has the ingredients that Gina Falcone's, the top one, does. And that was more by coincidence because these are all the things that grow abundantly on our farm. I didn't want to have to bring in anything else in. So there are violets in there, and violets look a bit like our breasts, you know, with their shape. And they're actually the Wisconsin state flower, which I'm in Wisconsin right now. So that's kind of fun, and it's everywhere. Like our farm is just covered with violets. Oh, no, I put the leaf. I didn't even notice that said blossom. Yeah, so maybe she used blossom. I use the leaf. Yeah, because that's where all that good mucilaginous effect is, which is part of its, I learned from leaves. The mucilaginous effect is what helps it be like a powerful dissolvent. So it can dissolve. So for people with fibrous breasts, you're going to want to have to eat your violets in the summer, but then to use a breast balm that includes violets because it's good for the fibrous breast, it's good for lumps, it's good for the calcium deposits. Really a super powered plant for being such a friendly looking plant. I think it's very cheerful. So the violets are powerful, and then red clover blossoms, so very well known for being a blood cleanser, which that's what the lymph is a blood cleanser. And I use, so when my patients are going to have surgery, I have them make a red clover brew the night before their surgery, have them strain it and take it with them to the hospital. And as soon as they're cleared for fluids, I'll have them drink that quart before they drink any other water, and it just clears out that anesthesia in the time. And especially for older individuals, they don't clear anesthesia as well, and it can actually, affect their mental too.
But the sooner they drink that, the better. Like if they wait 2 days later, it's not as effective. But it's really powerful, and then people they feel better and they recover so much better when they can get that cleared out of their system. It's very powerful. And then calendula, well known for impacting where the sun does not shine. It brings its own shine to like our underarms, our groin, certainly our breasts don't get sun. And calendula is great for lymph, and that's what we're using it for tonight, but it's one of those ones that have many uses. The wound healer and on and on. And then one of my favorite parts of the formula are dandelion flowers, because the flowers are a muscle relaxant. And so that signature is if you pull, when you harvest the dandelion blossom and you see that milky white sap come out of the stem, that like latex or liquid sap is the indication that it's a muscle relaxant. So the blossoms are pretty powerful at that. And we have supporting muscles underneath our breast, but there's so much tension oftentimes in the breast. And so if the breasts are tense themselves, the lymph can flow freely. So that's a good reason to have the dandelion in there. I don't know if that way, if it's just healthy muscle, but if it feels tighter, it needs to be stretched, because if it feels tight, then it's not going to flow through as well. But we'll be doing a chest stretch in a moment that will help with that. The dandelion blossoms? Yeah, because the blossoms are the muscle relaxant. But certainly dandelion roots aids your digestion in your liver, and that's going to support the lymph too if you're fully digesting your food, and then your liver can handle all the things that and I add bergamot essential oil in there, because orange and lavender and bergamot is very similar to orange in my oil. But I included the recipes because if you like to make your own, customized to your own breasts, you would know best what your breast. That's hard to say. That's what your breasts want. There's one from Margie Flint, and hers is a little different. So she uses shea butter and beeswax and coconut oil and jojoba oil, along with aloe vera juice, and then her main medicinal part of that is chaga. And so chaga is like a super powered, not really a mushroom, it's a polypore fungi. They're really hard. I don't know if everybody's familiar with chaga, but it looks more like it's petrified. And so it takes a lot of power to get it smaller. So she makes chaga reduction. But chaga seems to impact every single part of the body. It's beneficial to your blood sugar, to your cardiovascular system, it's to your adrenals. I don't think there's an area that it doesn't support. Tons of anti-inflammatory components. Something to consider starting to include in your daily food. But Connie Karsten, she has the lamb shop down in Hutchinson, Minnesota. Apparently she has chaga chunks that you can eat or simmer for maybe 6 hours, I think. And then drink that liquid, and then you can freeze it and then reuse it again. Because I've only done more of the powdered chaga, is what I've done from Woodland Essence. But I just was with Kirsten Cross for dinner. She was on the board and we did the graphic design. And she likes the chaga chunks, even though she doesn't know what Connie calls them. So that's what she said they didn't like. Because you do want to get it from somebody who's harvested it respectfully, because it's one of those components or one of those birds that are getting over harvested because of the popularity. I think the respectful part of it. And then we have Slippery Assortment of Herbal Oils by Susan Reed, and that's from her book here. So when I first started developing this class 11 years ago, this book, Breast Cancer, Breast Health, The Wise Woman Way, and What Your Doctor May Not Tell You About Breast Cancer were the foundation of my original class, because you had the herbal wisdom and then a little more enlightened Western medical view. But this one is just a great resource because she gives you a lot of options. So if you have a diagnosis of breast cancer and you want to use Western medicine and herbal, she tells you how to go about doing that. So lots and lots of great options in here. But in her breast balm, she uses burdock seed oil, which I've never used burdock seed. You know, I think in Chinese medicine, burdock seed is good for your eyes, which would make sense because burdock is good for your liver, and the liver is represented by the eyes. It opens into the eyes, so that strengthens cells. And then, of course, calendula is in there, but she likes to infuse her calendula in animal fat because she said that it penetrates more quickly and deeply. That's not really appealing to all people, and it's hard to get good lard. I've had, when we order, you know, like a half a pig or whatnot, we can get committed stuff, but otherwise I would be suspect, because if you don't know how the animal's life would live, that can impact the quality of the lard. Then she uses comfrey root oil for sore breasts, and that's her pre and post-surgical ally. I have not used comfrey root. Have you used comfrey root? Making what? Oh. Oh. Yeah, I've only ever used the leaf, and I love the leaf. Not necessarily for breast though, but it's a great mineral source. I can love it. Mm-hmm. Oh, so Susan Reed, we're talking about the breast oil that Susan Reed is, that's listed on the handout. And she uses comfrey root oil, but I don't have any experience at all using comfrey root at all. And then she also uses the dandelion flower to promote the detoxization and facilitating the release of held emotion. So that's exactly why it's in the formula that I made. And then Mindy Green is also an herbalist, but she's more well known for her work with essential oils. She has a book out, and I was fortunate enough to be able to take a class from her many years ago. She recommends using pomegranate oil. So just using an oil, not a salve, because the pomegranate oil is like a yin tonic and it clears heat. So good if there's any inflammation in the breast too. So she uses pomegranate oil, and then gives you the option of various oils that she recommends. So it's orange, lavender, because both have a lot of research in cancer use, and then angelica, which is a nice water too, and sandalwood, frankincense, geranium, atlas cedar, or rose. And so if you were to make a formula that really appeals to that, say if you have a 4-ounce bottle of the oil, you would add 40 to 60 drops to get the proper concentration for applying publicly. I haven't tried that. But I don't know if the pomegranate oil stains your skin. Oh, then the fruit, yeah. So it isn't the claim. And then the recommendation on here is from Maria Katherine, so a famous herbalist, and she recommends marjoram in olive oil to apply to the lymph nodes specifically. And marjoram is related to oregano, which is highly inflammatory and everything. Or calendula salve or St. John's wort, and that's when you're feeling congestion in the particular lymph and just to rub it on there every day. That's kind of a nice use, I think. So more of the herbs that have immune support in them as well. Okay, so we'll go back to page 1. And next on our letting it flow, we have Qigong and Qi bouncing. So Qigong is one of the 8 parameters of Chinese medicine. So acupuncture is the most well known, and there's herbal, feng shui, the art of conditioning. But the Qigong is meditation, physical meditation, and it's meant to stimulate your acupuncture meridian for good health. And there are many different types of Qigong and teachers, and it's endless. But we're just going to do one move that would be really useful for both our breasts and for, say, taking a break from your computer. So much of what we do every day is like this. We're on the computer, we're cooking, we're cleaning, gardening. You know, it's all forward motion. So this Qigong moves really helps to open the chest, and then you get a pumping action and some nice deep breathing to calm your nervous system too. We're going to do this together. You can be seated or standing, whatever you're comfortable with. It's easy to do seated. So starting position are your arms at a 90-degree angle, just relax. And then when I say to breathe in, remember to invite your breath down to your lower abdomen. So we're going to breathe in while we bring our arms out to where you can feel a nice stretch. So, and then once you get here, then breathe out. And now breathe in again. Exhale. Breathe in one more time. And then come back to center. We're going to do this one more time. So breathe in. Exhale. Again. Exhale. Nope. Okay. And breathe. And exhale back to the center. So this is a great stretch for here, which gets tight on all of us. But that pumping action will help us move the lymph. And then that nice breathing. So just when you're taking a break from the computer is a great time to do that, or whenever you feel a little tight in the upper body. But you always take a full breath and an exhale without any movement in the middle, just to prolong that opening of the stretch. And Qi bouncing. So Qi bouncing is the more gentle form of rebounding. The rebounders are those small trampolines that you can bounce on that really add the gravity impact to the lymph moving. But that can be a bit hard on some people's joints. So the Qi bouncing is very gentle, and you can do it anywhere. So if you want to join me, you can stand up, and then you can have your feet. You don't have to be shoulder width apart. And so you'll raise up onto the ball of your foot. And once you get good at getting on the ball of your foot, then eventually you can really ground your big toe, but that throws people off. So then have your arms relaxed above your head, and then you get a bounce. So let your fingers just do, so we're getting a lot of good grab here. So a friend of mine, who's also an acupuncturist, she would do this the whole entire time she was brewing tea in the morning. Then she was drinking green tea, which is 3 minutes. I can't get 3 minutes at once. But you can do this like after you've done the Qigong. Then you can do this before you sit back down on your computer and get to work. So, okay. It's good. Very freeing, and I always feel kind of tingly after I do that. If you can feel the movement. And then next up is acupressure. So there's an internal branch of the liver meridian, but what goes directly over the breast is the stomach meridian. So digestive health does have a direct impact on breast health. And there's one acupuncture point. So if you find your clavicle, the collarbone here, kind of in line with the nipple, and you slide down, and you'll kind of come to a little well there. Feel it? Tender. That's stomach 16. So that's a pretty big drainage site. So you just want to gently massage that. You don't want to do too hard because lymph doesn't need hard. But if you just use those nice round motions, you know, after even 15, 30 seconds, you can feel it really soften. And then allow more of the fluid to drain appropriately. It's kind of amazing how quickly that can go from tender to not tender. It's a nice one to monitor. And I always thought that the left side, because so much of the lymph drains on the left side, would be more tender, but I think your dominant side is more congested muscularly, so that side's tender too. Is that what you found? Okay. And then last on the list with letting it flow, this is a recommendation from Matthew Wood to apply yarrow to your breasts if they've ever been damaged or injured. He gave the example of a woman who had been playing softball and she got hit right in the breast by a softball. And not having any herbal experience at that time, she did later develop breast cancer right where the ball was hit. And so he recommends that yarrow be applied to areas that have been impacted. And we're not talking about this tonight, it's in your bonus section on the last page, but mammograms in your breast. You know, all that compression and then ionizing radiation. I can compress you 4 times and then the ionizing radiation. So yarrow is a good thing if you ever had one of those. I think any time where an expert clinic gets hit, to me, would warrant coming out. Because yeah, kids can be a little rough. Yeah. I watched and was actually really something like that. Really preferred. All of these, no, that's yeah, no, that's good to know because I'm a huge fan of both of Solomon Field. So mostly Solomon Field. So okay. I will add that to the notes for the next version of the class. Now we're going to talk a bit about nourishment for the breath. And it goes without saying that we do need to eat clean food as best we can. We're fortunate in the Twin Cities to have such an abundance of farmers markets. So you can actually talk to the farmer and ask what their farming practices are, like do they use any pesticides or herbicides or the integrated pest management, whatever. In the winter, not quite as available. But I did find a really interesting research article on on the way that we can support the proper detoxification of estrogen. Because estrogen, or all hormones, once they deliver their message, then they become a toxin, an endotoxin, and then the liver has to break it down. But estrogen can actually take a short, safe way to be broken down, or it can take a longer cancer-promoting way. And so this research article found that by consuming daily some ground flaxseed and a cup of cruciferous vegetables would help to ensure the short safety. So with the flaxseed, you would use a whole, like a tablespoon of whole flaxseed and then grind it. And then you can put it either on your food, in water, smoothie, whatever, what have you. And you don't have to have them together. But the ground flaxseed, and I heard this years ago too from an naturopathic doctor who said that if you take the ground flaxseed and you put it in warm water, you can really see its mucilaginous effect. Like it's slurpy to drink it down. It takes a little getting to, but that helps to heal your gut line too. Because he used it quite a lot for leaky gut to get those tight junctions back up. I don't know if it's just it reinforces the mucosal layer, would be how that would work. But the cruciferous vegetables contain the indole-3 carbinol, which is the sought after ingredient. And one of the first acupuncturists I ever saw, was 25 years ago, told me that I needed to eat more big leafy green vegetables, and I avoided them in the grocery store because they were all huge. I didn't know what to do with them. So after she made that recommendation, I went to Barnes and Noble and got this gem of the book, Green Glorious Green. So it has a whole chapter dedicated to each of the different vegetables, and it tells you how to buy it, how to store it, and then super simple recipes. They've all been kid tested. And so this was life-changing. Imagine living without vegetables at this point. So it was really, really a good resource, especially for people who aren't skilled in the kitchen yet. They haven't been cooking for themselves and are just starting to do that. This is a great resource. But with the cruciferous vegetables too, if you have any thyroid issues, you want to make sure they're cooked, because the cruciferous vegetable family is pretty huge. So kale, collard, cauliflower, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, and then arugula is my favorite. But you want to have, with the thyroid, if they're not cooked, they can be hard on your thyroid. They're considered glycogens then, where you also want to add an acid for them, like either vinegar or lemon, which most recipes all have that. So when I learned that, and I looked at all my recipes, but the acid helps you absorb their minerals better, because all those big leafies are tons, like kale is. So you want to get that acid in there as well. Pardon me? Well, I think if you just eat an acid with the meal, I love cyclone cider or fire cider as a topping for vegetables, or just you can just take it with it. But it makes it pretty darn good in a vinaigrette too. Fire cider, yeah, delicious. Another thing I mentioned, even though there's plenty of around. And so another specific for promoting breast health is to consume enough iodine. Because we often think of iodine as support for the thyroid, but the next biggest users of iodine in the body are your breast and your prostate. So it needs a fair amount. I prefer to get it from seaweed rather than, I only use sea salt, and that doesn't have iodine in it. But if you go out to a restaurant, you're getting the regular salt anyway. But with the seaweed, I like to put it in my bone broth. That's a nice way to add that nutrient in there, or to make little snacks. That's one of my favorites. Like it has nuts, berries, whatnot. Because I didn't like seaweed at first. So then once they put it in a snack, And with one of the reasons that iodine is so important too is, I don't know if you remember your periodic table of elements. This one from way back in chemistry. So iodine is a halogen. Where is it? Oh, here it is. So the second one, the halogen. So also in the halogen category are fluorine and chlorine and bromine. And when they're in the same category too, they can dock on the same receptor. So if you're taking showers that with chlorinated water, that can dock on your iodine receptors. So it's good to filter the chlorine and fluorine out. Bromine was used more as a dope, like a flower or dough conditioner many years ago, not so much now. But being that we don't have, I don't think our soil here has iodine in it, so we're not going to get it from our food. It would have to be more from the seed. It's especially important to have clean water and shower filters, and we have well water now. But when we were in St. Paul, we were just on an automatic program to get that filter sent to us, so we didn't have to try to keep track of it. So we've already, and then the next list, the ginger, turmeric, garlic, these are all more things that are more anti-cancer properties. The legumes is Susan Reed's favorite DNA repair kit. It's one of the most powerful ones to do that. Mushrooms, they all have superpowers. And fresh fruits, but I'm a bit more partial to berries because they're lower sugar and then have a lot of minerals. We have an abundance of them in the summer. Fresh violets are on the nourishment list. So definitely, because it's been said that if you have an abundance of a plant or a plant that just shows up in your yard, that it's there specifically for you. So if you have a lot of violets, or you have a lot of whatever grows up, then you should really enjoy them. Making sure that there hasn't been any sprays or dog food or any of that sort of thing going on. And best to avoid unfermented soy and non-organic soy. So I have a soy over brochure too that I'd like to. I think I have enough for everybody for you to pick up because it's really problematic. And the only fermented products that are good with soy is the miso and the natto, and we don't really have natto very readily available, and apparently that's a very acquired taste also. But the miso is fermented, so it would have health benefits. And where you find most of the problems, where I find problematic, is the soy protein isolate. So all the protein bars, that's what they use as the protein source, the soy protein isolate. And it really wreaks havoc on your hormones. It adversely impacts how you absorb vitamin D. Has to be avoided. And tofu isn't, tofu is sort of okay. So that's made, I'm not a fan of tofu, so I have a hard time. But it's not necessarily. It's just some people like to use it as a primary protein source, and that was not how, because Japanese women have more of breast cancer than we do, and they attribute it to eating tofu. And no, I think there are other involved here. But the other one, edamame, that one is safer to eat because that one has been harvested before the outer coating has been formed, and that's where most of the anti-diseases are, because they're so detrimental. So eating the fresh edamame. Okay. And you'll also want to avoid sugar, trans fat, partially hydrogenated fats, and all artificial ingredients and colorings, and that would go along with eating a diet. But all that artificial stuff, our body doesn't know what to do with it. It's artificial, it's not from nature. Our body doesn't know enough to it. And so what it'll tend to do is just tuck all that away in our fat. And then you get this big mess of a whole bunch of things getting tucked away in the fat. Lord knows what can happen with that. And sugar, because sugar is a bit addictive. But people can accept too. And part of it is that sugar, like sugar cane that grows, it has all the minerals, it has all the enzymes that you need to help digest all that energy, but that's all stripped away. So then when you eat sugar, you have to draw on your own body's store of minerals and enzymes in order to digest it. Then that depletes your immune system because all your minerals are going for digesting the sugar. And its molecule is just a hair breadth away from what a cocaine molecule is like. So it's serious stuff. So small doses is fine every once in a while, but if it's got a hold of you, you need to take some steps to clean that up. And the best way to do that is to really the prenuptial infusion following, and then that thing will help to take that edge off of the sugar. Now we'll move on to the super nourishment. Such a lovely way to pass the day. The top is tricky, so we think about all its nutrients, all its systems, but it's nutrient dense too. It has vitamin D in it, tons of B vitamins. So a nice long tea for that. And then dandelion tea, so you're using the root for the tea, nice and rich. And that you want to do more for your digestion. That's wonderful. And I am a fan of the herbal brews. So the difference between a brew and a tea is that a tea you steep for just 5-10 minutes, and then you're getting the aromatics, which are the beneficial part. But the brew with that longer steep of 5 to 8 hours, you're getting all the nutritive components into the solution. And then that will be what will support you. Nettle is such a superfood. That's one of my favorites because it's so deeply nourishing to us. And so like the nettles and the oat straw don't directly impact the lymph, but anything that's going to give you that big infusion of minerals or help calm you is going to calm you are, the less tension in your body, the better the lymph will flow. So I love the nettles, and I even didn't have any nettles on our farm. So I imported some horsemanure from a friend and some neighbors. I have a little area, and I have a small patch growing now, but it usually tends to proliferate, but I just couldn't stand the thought of not having it. Because we've never had cattle. And so like dairy farms have just tons of nettle growing because like that uric acid in the soil. And then red clover is what I'm enjoying today. You can tell by this lovely color. For the being the blood cleanser, and it is known for its cancer prevention, and it is an alkalizer of our blood too, because we eat pretty large quantity of meat in the United States, and that meat can cause our blood to go more acidic. We want it to be a little more balanced. And so red clover actually alkalizes the blood, which I guess would tie into being the cleanser maybe. And it's full of phytoestrogens. So those are estrogens that the plants make. So when we get to the next section on the hormones, that will be important. And I like oat straw. I find that one to be good combined with other things too. So I often like it with lemon balm, because lemon balm is the coolest of all the mints, so it's the most calming. So it's delicious with the oat straw. Or I like it with so delicious with do that. But there are many, you can do burdock too, because if you really need some deep cleansing, you can do a burdock brew and it'll taste really good to you. You don't need to cleanse so much, it might be a little hectic. So you have to do your own. And then we'll go over a few of the herbs that benefit the lymph. So we've gone over the ones specifically for the breast, so the red clover and the violet, calendula, and red root, or aka New Jersey tea, have a lot of experience with that one, so the herbs that I don't grow myself or haven't been around, I don't learn as much about, but with the research I did for the lymph part of it, that one is always listed at the top of things, at the top of the lymph stimulant and Hoover. You have used that one? Mark? As a weapon?
Sorry, but more for the mental,
Oh,
you know, but I don't know if you're getting to it,
oh, yeah.
royal.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, because it's sticky like wonderful. And that's the sign of the stuff lymph is sticky and both those kinds of things. That makes sense too. And clovers, so cleavers, when I first heard about cleavers, I hadn't met it yet. But my friend Anita Tigan, who's also an acupuncturist, she had used cleavers to help resolve Morton's neuroma in one of her patients. So that's like kind of a growth underneath one of your toes that can be very uncomfortable. But cleavers is it has a square stem, and that's the signature for working with nerves or the nervous system. And so I remember the first time I saw it in the woods, I was like, I heard about it for so long that it wasn't really growing where I tried to. Now there's an area, maybe a half hour from my farm, just has a whole sort of stuff. Quite a bit to harvest. So cleavers you could make an oil or a tincture. I don't do a tea out of it. It's pretty have you met cleavers before? Because it's a pretty yeah. I don't think you get a lot of material out of the whole plant. Oh. Does it have the vanilla in it? Oh, okay. I haven't made an oil of it. So we'll back up a little bit to both poke root and baptisia. So those are considered toxic by most, huh? Potent, yeah. Well, I think they're potent. But if you look them up, like say in an IV book, it will say that unless you're trained and you know about them. I don't work with poke quite as much because it doesn't go here, but I think from you. And that's where drop doses are essential. So I've had great success with mono using baptisia, just like 2 drops a day, and it was really striking how quickly that dissolved, when normally you hear about it going on for months and months and months and months. And on our farm, so with the baptisian, it's normal the signature is, or one of the blackened signatures are those black pods that the seeds blossoms turn into, and that's for like gangrene or but we have so much of it at the farm because the deer won't eat it. And it breaks off at ground level and starts to look like a tumbleweed. And that didn't happen in the city because we only had 1 or 2. But to me, that would be like, if you have a gangrenous foot, it's going to get cut off. So I think that's another signature for baptisia's work in saving their feet for one thing. But I never been, and so that they're blowing all over our farm. So, hopefully,
Yeah.
oh, well, I think it's more of an East Coast.
But I told him I go. Yeah.
So the good thing on hand. Yeah, I think that's fine. You think? Someday. So those, both potent. Yeah. The title of our group is used for years. That makes sense, because that would more likely be bacterial in nature, so it can help. You know, as an immune, or as a lymph remedy, and an immune remedy, it would help. You know. Then we have echinacea, which is a really powerful stimulant for all of its great immune support. And I recently learned that, you know, we have two versions that we can use, the augustifolia or the Purpurea. And the augustifolia has much greater amounts of the active ingredient that the angustifolia has more, but it's very slow growing, where the Purpurea grows much more quickly but has less. And so some people just combine the two to get enough of the remedy that they need. And then mullein has support for the lymph, but more specifically so like cleavers, I often think is for men, because its little seed heads are like little pair of testicles. So a little more affinity for that area, where mullein is your neck and your lungs. I've long used mullein as a remedy, but more for like when a chronic cough and cilia has been worn down. But now it's nice to know that maybe part of that reason is because it supports the lymph. Because if you know, when you touch the mullein leaf, it's just like that soft, velvety, you know, it has all those little hairs on it. So that's that. And figwort is Scrofularia endosa. I haven't used that much at all, but I am going to research if it does grow in this area. But I didn't know what scrofula was. I've seen that in all, you know, over and over in the books. I'm like, what is scrofula? And it's lesions on the neck, like this really big pustules all over here, and it's from a bacteria that's related to tuberculosis. So rather than getting TB in your lungs, you get this stuff in your neck, and it's certainly not just, you know, in our modern day society anymore. Or that looks really frightening in the pictures. But figwort would be the go-to bird there. The Oregon grapefruit is another often recommended for the lymph that I don't use that one. But in the cervical, okay. Yeah, because there are a lot of lymph in by the cervicals, because that's quite a joint. Here. Very good. And then we already touched upon, because all the herbs have so many more roles they play. So a lot of them that are good for the lymph are good for the kidney, because they're both governing the waterways in the body. And it seems like burdock does it all. And it took me quite a while to figure out, in one of your classes, you had said that burdock was the remedy for chronic strep throat. And after all these years, I figured out why, because it acts more, so when you have immune challenges, and then say if you've been given antibiotics, that creates a lot of debris in your body. And Western medicine doesn't really address how to get rid of all of those dead bacterial bodies. And so you really need a lot more liver support to clear that out. And so I think that's why the burdock really supports the liver to clear that out, because if you're still full of all of that gunk, your immune system is not doing well, and you can catch another cold and another cold. But you really need to get that drained out. Okay, so now let's go to page 4 on the terminology. Make this brief. So estrogen was actually the first isolated hormone discovered by scientists, and that's what's predominant in our first half of our cycle. And there are probably 20 different estrogens, but the ones we're more interested in tonight are estradiol, estriol, and estrone. But with estrogen, the whole role is to have the cells, which will be important when we talk about DNA. And the estriol is created in the placenta during pregnancy. And interestingly, Japanese women have a much higher amount of estriol. And that one does not promote breast cancer at all. And then estrone is created in fat cells. So you can have become estrogen dominant, or have too much estrogen, if your fat cells are producing that too. And then progesterone, which is the hormone that's predominant in the second half. So we only get progesterone if we ovulate, to balance the effect of estrogen, but it means to protect and promote gestation. I think that's the royal decree. And it effectively prevents the binding of xenoestrogens in our cells. So the xenoestrogens are estrogens that are found in the environment from all the different chemicals that are in all our products and everywhere, because of all the tens of thousands of chemicals, a very small amount of it is tested on to see how they affect humans. Don't quite understand that. The reasoning behind that, but the xenoestrogens are really problematic. So I'm jumping ahead a little bit. So the xenoestrogens, they're the bullies of the estrogen. So we have the regular estrogen, and then we have xenoestrogens and phytoestrogens. And the xenoestrogens are really, they're the most aggressive, because unfortunately, the receptors for estrogen in our body are not too picky about who can dock in the site. So if it looks anything remotely like an estrogen molecule, it gets allowed to dock on that site. And so that's how we become estrogen dominant, because we have so much from our environment docking on there before our own estrogen will get a chance. But if you have plenty of phytoestrogen in your diet, those can be more numerous. They're not as strong as the xenoestrogens or even the regular, but they have power in numbers. So they can get to those receptors, and then that would effectively prevent the xenoestrogen from docking on that site. But so much, like even the heterocycline amines, if you get from card, if you tar your meat too much, those molecules will fight estrogen too. I mean, it's on and on and on and on and on where this comes from. And with an abundance, because with estrogen, the role is to create cells to proliferate. If we have if our DNA has been damaged, which sometimes is the general replication, you can get into. But then when that damaged DNA is exposed to estrogen, it will just keep replicating and potentially turn to a cancer. And what's even worse with the xenoestrogens is that they bioaccumulate in adipose tissue, so in fat tissue, so in our breast, can be in breast milk and in the blood, but they don't ever break down. So they're synthetic in nature, so they just don't break down like things in nature do. And so that's really scary when you think about our bodies being impacted by this every day. So the better can avoid a lot of these, better healthy. And with the phytoestrogens, oh wait, no. Right, to back up a little bit, if you can go to page 5, got a very long list that's from Dr. Lee's book. And so it gives all of the estrogens are tracked very long, all of progesterone. But if you just take a look at all of them that are italic and have a asterisk, none of those are beneficial. So no libido, increased fat, depression, fluid retention, fibrocystic breast, and it goes on and on and on. But all of those are a result of the estrogen dominance, like all this. So the exception would be if you're having an ovulatory cycle. If you don't ovulate, you're not going to get any progesterone to balance the estrogen. But otherwise, all of these really problematic conditions are from the excess estrogen. And you really don't get the very bottom of the progesterone, you can get because sleepiness or depression or digestive problems, but that's really the only if you're using a progesterone cream, and then you get too much. But otherwise, we don't get any progesterone from the environment. Happens. I find that kind of interesting. But that wouldn't be, but it could just be with evolution of the estrogen receptors. We're more programmed to really search out for that. But when we go into where we find all this toxicity, so this is one of my favorite books. It's not necessarily on breast health, called Breast, A Natural and Unnatural History by Florence Williams. So she's a science writer. So it's the whole, it goes from the first breast implant with a woman who just wanted to hear that, how that happened, how it impacts architecture. Go back here. Another picture. So it's a really, it's a fun read, but it's also a little disheartening. But she says that breasts carry the burden of the mistakes we have made in a stage of Okay. So let's go to where we find all the toxicity so we can avoid them. And certainly reading labels is a big one, because if your beauty products or whatnot have the FDA actually granted the cosmetic industry self-regulation back in 1938. So they can and they do use anything in there. Unfortunately, the Environmental Working Group is working to get that regulation fixed or revised, and California is a little bit more progressive on that. So they recently had more of the toxic ingredients that you find in beauty products banned, and so that can eventually impact the whole nation. Because a company is not going to make certain ingredients in California and the rest is different. So it's nice to know if they can, but if you look at page 6, So this is, so this is a class I took by a woman who was talking about all the things that are in our health and beauty products. And I'm not going to read all through this, but I just want to highlight a couple. So isopropyl alcohol is a solvent and a denaturant. So a denaturant is, so if you were going to cook an egg, like you put a raw egg in the pan, it's nice and jiggly and porous, and then you cook it and the whole thing hardens. That's the proteins in there being denatured. Like we do not want that happening in the body. They have things that are supposed to be fluid and moving to denature. And the isopropyl alcohol is unfortunately with some essential oil brands, it's what they dilute essential oil with. And if we move to mineral oil, that's also a petroleum ingredient, but that suffocates the skin. So it acts like a plastic wrap that you put on it until your skin can't breathe. And then all the acronyms are in, like the polypropylene glycol is the same as what's in anything. And there's no difference between what industry uses and what is put in personal care products. And then the next one down, I can't pronounce it, that releases formaldehyde. The formaldehyde is what we use for embalming. Like we don't want to prematurely do that. The parabens are part of the benzene family, and that's a known human carcinogen. So they were removed from industry at one point, but then it was brought back. And you'll see those as preservatives, like the last two ingredients on a product. They'll say polyparaben. So even though it's not that much, you don't need that much to be detrimental to your skin, especially if it's going right on your skin and into your bloodstream. And the sodium lauryl sulfate and the sodium lauryl sulfate have been more in the news because those are foaming products. And then more foaming with the DEA, MEA, and PPA. The FD&C color pigment, over the years, many colors have been taken out. But they still have a lot of the toxic ones. They're made from coal color. They still have a lot of toxic ones in food. But I have been heartened to see like beetroot and turmeric as coloring agents in different foods. It's nice to know there's some products. And then if there's fragrance on a label, that's extremely problematic. Because that can be up to 4,000 different synthetic ingredients in there, which they do not have to put on the label. That's the scary part. There's fragrance, so they can just list fragrance, so you have no idea what's in there. It's most likely synthetics because if they were using essential oil, they would smoke it. And then we already talked about the chlorine and the importance of getting the shower head filter. With in our home and office and car, cleaning products are another one that do not have to list in them, other than if they're noting, oh, it contains chlorine for the chlorine bleach. Where the natural cleaning products, I find, I'm a big fan of Norwex. It makes cleaning easier and it's non-toxic. Norwex, N-O-W-R-E-X, it stands for Norwegian Experience, so it's from Norway. But really, so they use microfiber in there, but they're a little higher end microfiber, but they have an EnviroCloth that can clean the hood of your stove like nothing. That was my least favorite job because it's so sticky and greasy and I could never get it off. And then that just makes it extremely easy. And with the off-gassing of carpets and furniture and things, that's a big source of where our xenoestrogens come from. So the new car smell, which some people like, but that's all the off-gassing from the plastics in the dashboard and carpeting. And if you remember with your last car, you get that film on the inside of the window. So it's not on the outside, it's on the inside, and that's all the off gassing accumulating, all those chemicals that are accumulated on the inside of your car. So the best time to get a new car, if you want a new one, would be in the summer, because the heat helps to speed up the off gassing process. So you set your car in the sun, let it get really hot, roll the windows down, let that keep doing that. At the same time that you really up your antioxidants, if you're going to be sitting in that car, it's not good. Because when Dan got his pickup truck, I didn't know he was home for probably 8 months. It still smells, and it's 5 years old. I just drove because I bought a new truck. That smell is just, it's not good. Yeah, it's the off gassing of all of the components, because there really isn't much. I don't think there's much regulation on what they use. But what bothers me is there's so much new home construction, like the apartment buildings, it's going up like crazy, and then they have people moving in immediately. That's what they're done. And some of them have places that they can't open the window, and that's really not good. As far as how yeah, that's another whole. Yeah, I mean, pharmaceuticals are what many of the Western medical model, that's what they're trained in to use as how they're going to support a patient. But they are aquatoxic, and what's terrible is that they're not fully detoxified by the time you flush down the toilet, so in your urine, so you're drinking the residues of pharmaceuticals in your water, unless you're filtering it with a good quality filter. Yeah, it is. Yep. Exactly. Oh yeah. Yeah, because unfortunately, I mean, some medications obviously are needed and effective, but they often just suppress the system, and their side effects are huge, long. So it's really, even one of my acupuncture teachers would not take a new patient if they were on more than 5 medications, because he said he wouldn't be able to overcome all the side effects and make it easy in that patient. So that's why I'm so extremely grateful that we have the herbal medicine to support us, because we can use that every single day, and plants are willing to help us. It's just a lot of people aren't on that path. At some point they get money, because I've had a lot more elderly people in my practice now that I'm in Hudson. So it's been very interesting. But sometimes that list is and some people are very possessive of that list, like, and then I tend not to work with them after that, because I'm not going to way. If they're not interested in getting off the medications or taking other drugs. Yeah, pharmaceuticals are not always in our best interest, for sure. So other things that can contribute to that xenoestrogen problem is incense, artificially scented candles. So anything artificial is going to be that. 100% pure beeswax candles are much better option, I think. And then cigarette smoke, then that's a no-brainer. But now, most recently, we have the wildfire impacting us. And Dr. Jacob Shore, he's a retired naturopathic doctor. He does emails every once in a while where he'll do like a meta-analysis of all the recent research. And so he did one now on a certain size particulate and its impact on breast cancer or breast cancer rate. So Atlanta was one of the areas they studied because of the huge airport there and dense population. But it was shown that it was a much larger increase in breast cancer where you were exposed to a lot of those particulates. And, you know, this was the first year that we had immense exposure to it. So highly recommend air purifier in your home. It's not all the time. Certainly when there's all those haze in the air. Because I have an air purifier in my office, but I'm just a few blocks from Highway 94. It's a busy thoroughfare, so just to keep the air that I breathe all day. And there are many, many different brands. They're all high quality, so lots to choose from for what you need. And another thing that I like to use, yarrow comes up again, for temporary protection, because I'm pretty sensitive to the toxic smells. Like there's many stores I can't even do, like State Farm and Home Depot, or a tire store. But to get you through that, if you do have to go in, I like to use yarrow environmental protection or yarrow environmental solution, so it's YES. So that's by the FES brand. And so there's sea salt in there, yarrow tincture, and yarrow flower essences. And so it can protect you from environmental exposure. It can protect you from negative emotional abuse, so like hard to get along with coworkers. But one of my patients, their church was being remodeled, but they were still holding the service there. So it was a pretty toxic smell, and she didn't want to miss the worship. So I recommended that she use that. And so she got through the service without it. And then so you might want to use that for where you're working now. To take that and maybe even carry it in your pocket too, so you can take it frequently. So that can help protect you and then just get the heck out of there. So and one thing, one thing I realized that I didn't do, I brought the brush, but I did not mention on the let it flow for dry skin brushing. Does any of you do that? So the dry skin brushing really helps to physically move the lymph up. And so you would start, so you use a natural bristle. This is a cactus actually. So they make some fancier ones too, but I like the ones I can use everywhere. And so given that the lymph is a one-way system, we're going to mimic how it flows. So you would start, you would start at your feet, and you don't want to do really hard, but you want to do a little firm, but just so it feels good, because lymph will need gentle stimulation in order to get it to move. So you'll start at your feet, brush up, all around, and then lifelong goes along this path. And you probably want to spend a little extra time where all the nodes are, like your knees. Keep going up, and then really work the inguinal area, and do that on both sides, and front and back, and then you'll figure out your own routine so you get all the parts covered. So you go up your glutes, but you always want to go up because that's where the lymph is going. It's that one way that's going up to the gut. And then when you do the arms, you'll do, and I like to lift it up because in the gravity can help the lymph too. But spend a good amount of time doing it, and it does feel awfully good, especially in the winters when everything's a little drier. When you're all sweaty in the summer, not my favorite. Do that, and do that. You do not do this on your breast. The breast can be as much too tender, but you do want to do it on your abdomen too, and follow the path of the large intestine. So on the right, you have ascending, transverse, and descending. So you'll want to go nice, stimulate that area, and then on the back, you keep going up and up, and nice things here. And I had always thought that because you're stimulating the lymph, but you're also drawing toxins up onto the surface level, and I thought you had to shower afterwards, but you usually don't. So, Brianna, what did you tell me?
Well, there's two things that are on the
Oh,
what happened. I think my voice is they were doing a lot of questions to the but I like to brought it up. But I think it was not. Yeah, I say that I don't want to on over. I don't.
right, that makes good sense. Oh, yeah, and if you're using soap, you're removing the oil too. And Mariana is an esthetician, within the same concept. You can enjoy the. So let's talk about toxicity in our food and beverages. So plastic is a huge source of toxins. So the thinner the plastic, the more permeable it is to get into our food. So saran wrap is a big no-no because that is so thin. And like with all of our cheese being wrapped in that thin plastic, and cheese is a fat, so it's going to store that from the wrap. But one of the worst ones are plastic water bottles, the plastic bottles in general, because companies that are putting liquid in a plastic bottle don't have a huge warehouse full of already formed bottles. They start out as a little tab, they're put into a machine, they're steam heated into their shape, and then the liquid is poured in immediately. So there is no way you would not be polluted with plastic toxins because it's going into a warm bottle to solidify it. Isn't that delicious? I just got nauseous the first time I heard it. I was like, oh my God. So yeah, so that's when possible, carry your own containers because, and then it's just not good for the environment to have millions of bottles of plastic floating around. So you can really minimize how many estrogens are being exposed to by not drinking out of plastic. And the non-stick pans have been so notorious for quite a while. What they can reach into food and microwaves. One of my teachers said, when you choose convenience, you choose disease. And I think the microwave is the epitome of that. And it's in a plastic container, so that heat is going to off gas into the food, but the way the microwave works, or using it, like why would you want to use food? But the molecules just move so quickly against one another that it destroys the vitality of the food. If we want to have vitality, our food certainly needs to be vital to support us. So I'm a big, I don't care for microwaves at all. I like toaster ovens. Oh, yeah, no, toaster air fryers are fine, stovetop's fine. But that instant, a lot of people say, well, I just heat my coffee in there. Here, it takes a minute. But then, you're getting that radiation too from the microwave if you're standing near it. That's not good. And coffee and alcohol, coffee, even though it's delicious, it does raise the estradiol level. There's some women who have found that their breasts are fairly kind of lumpy. Once they quit coffee, that smooths out, so the estrogen level has dropped a bit. But with coffee, we have, in the United States in general, we have proportion distortion. small coffee at a coffee shop, and I was like, this is great. Or when you look at our grandmothers, cups were tiny, like maybe 4 ounces, 6 ounces. So that's a lot for your body to handle. Even though coffee is delicious, the body does consider it a toxin. So I much prefer people to have a smaller amount to enjoy and to enjoy it, because then the impact on the liver is much less, and then coffee bitterness will help you digest your meal better. And then alcohol just taxes the liver. But certainly moderation is always good, but you don't have to ever know your alcohol. You can enjoy it in health promoting quantities. And this next topic has not ever been included on my list because I just learned about oxalate overload. Are any of you familiar with that condition? Yeah, so oxalates are anti-nutrients that are found in food. Our body makes a little bit. But this book came out this year, Toxic Superfoods by Sally K. Martin, How Oxalate Overload is Making You Sick and How to Get Better. So oxalate will be stored in your body. So most of my diet, before I learned about this, was what I thought were healthy foods. Green tea, dark chocolate, beets, sweet potatoes, chia seeds, nuts. Almonds are quite high in oxalate. And so once your body gets to a certain point and it's just stored too much, it's like it's got to come out, right? You're going to have pretty uncomfortable symptoms. And everybody handles oxalate differently. So in my case, I wasn't breastfed, so I was put on soy formula from day one. Soy is very high in oxalate. And then being that my immune system was not the best, I was on a lot of good. That destroys the oxalate-eating bacteria. And then for the last, 25 years, I've been eating these superfoods. So my body had had enough. And, crystals were coming out of my skin, joint pain all over the place. And it was a little crazy. And it was at the same time that I had Lyme this year. So going through that oxalate, they call it dumping when your body wants to get rid of it. So once you start decreasing your oxalate intake, your body knows that it can get rid of some. But you need to do it really slowly. I did not do it slowly. So that can be really damaging to your body. But there's not a lot of information out there. Doctors don't really know it. The only people who have are urologists because oxalates are known for kidney stones. But any other professions, they don't know about it. I'm really glad I got this book out now. So it's a bit of a tough read because oxalate can impact every single part of your body, including being part of a cancer promoting process. So it can impact your brain, your bones, your joints. So it's worth considering. So I put this on I put the book on the resource list, but if you go to her website, she has a nice article, the intro article. It was out in the Natural Medicine Journal in 2015. So it gives you a nice little overview so you can read it, and if you have any research or because currently the groups that are experiencing this more than others are people who gave up gluten and are now baking with a lot of almond flour. I'm in that group. And the smoothie group who are putting handfuls of spinach in their smoothies. Spinach is very high in oxalate. Or the people who feel like they've been eating healthy for many years, but their symptoms are getting worse. I would definitely suspect oxalate in many of those. But then unfortunately, a lot of the lab edibles have a lot of oxalate. Like wood sorrel, botanical name, oxalis, dandelion leaves. So much of my diet, because I took from Alan Bridles, and I was making wild green cakes with a ton of lamb's quarter and everything. Didn't happen. So if you don't have any symptoms that you can't explain otherwise, it would probably be good to budget how many oxalates you include in your diet, just so you don't hit a tipping point.
I just want to go on the origin walk, the sort of working through, that he's kind of saying, oh, marketing, well, use that spirit, calcium spirit.
Well, calcium will bind to the oxalate so that it can get out of the large. But how much dairy can you eat? I eat a little dairy, but the minerals, and so what happens, the oxalates will bind to our calcium, so that, so dairy will actually help it go out the large intestine, but the oxalate binds to a lot of the minerals, so they never get to get into our bones. So we end up with a mineral deficiency, even though I felt like I was chock full of them. And it's why this is my third go around with Lyme this year. The first two times were not bad at all. But now that after I got, I was so full of oxalate, that happened at the end of April. And that whole mess started, and then I got Lyme at the beginning of July, and it was horrible. So I'm extremely grateful for all the herbs that got me through that time. But really, check out that article and then just see, if you feel like you'll need to modify your diet. So the groups that are really low oxalate are melons, most cruciferous vegetables, but they recommend boiling them. Boiling will reduce the oxalate by 50%, where steaming it's only 5%. So the cruciferous, the whole onion family, the lily family, turnips and rutabagas, but potatoes are high in oxalate. So I'm now roasted turnip glasses. Well, doesn't have the texture of that. And meat and dairy don't have any oxalate. Coffee does not have oxalate. So I went to cereals as well from the green teas. I consume a lot of these herbs, so I love green tea too. So there was a lot of dismay and depression when I first found out that my diet was going to have to change. But once you know they're not benefiting you, I didn't really need them. Yeah. So melons and squash is okay, but sweet potatoes and yams are. So I don't think I left that in here. But in her article, she gives you a nice list of these are the ones that contain the highest amount. And that part of that too is the testing for oxalate isn't very good. Like how much is in a food? So you can search for the same thing on different sites and get different values. And so I tend to go more by what I find on the site because we've been researching it for a couple decades. But yeah, it did change a lot. So now my husband does most of our cooking, and so he'll make two different versions of the same dish because tomatoes are really high in oxalate, and so a lot of dishes have tomatoes in them. So I have my version and he has his version. They can break down to smaller things, but they're still just as dangerous. So your body will hold on to them until you start to lower your oxalate consumption, and then it knows that it can, they call it dumping. It can free up some, but that's supposed to be done really slowly. And when I discovered I had this issue, my mouth hurt so badly, like the top of my mouth was raw. My tongue felt like it had been scalded, my lips were seized, and now when I knew it must have been something I was doing, then I went to see one of my healers, and she's like, okay, you know you have a very high oxalate diet. And so then that started, she had fortunately I have two healers that have a lot of experience with it because not a lot of people do. So by changing so one of Kelly Martin is you really up your minerals by doing mineral soap. Far infrared sauna is good for helping to release them to the body. I do a salty sport drink when I'm not drinking a brew here. So it's some vinegar and calcium, potassium, magnesium, and a lot of sea salt. So we need far more sea salt than we usually do to replenish the minerals. while you're reducing your, and it can take years because you clear your most recent oxalate. So I'm going from 53 back down to first. So I think it can have a flare. The what? Okay, are we on? Okay. Thanks. And so the last one I want to end on then is food sensitivity, because when you have a food sensitivity, you don't fully digest the food, and often there's protein particles that are then floating around in the blood, and that's what alarms your immune system, but that also gums up your lymph and your kidneys. So if you know you can get tested for what foods don't necessarily agree, and it's not whether the food is bad or good, it's whether are you digesting it or not. And so then you would need to take digestive enzymes in between meals, so then the digestive enzymes can clear up that undigested debris from your body while you completely avoid the food. And that usually takes about 3 months to really clean that out. But that's a big lymph congester. And the oxalates too were congesting all my lymph because my legs were like this way during that time. It was crazy. It was a crazy time. I'm still pretty happy. So it was a learning lesson. One that I felt ready for. And then lastly, EMFs I want to talk about because that's they're everywhere, and they disturb normal cell growth by interfering with their hormonal, enzymatic, and chemical signals, causing DNA damage and histone oxygen. EMFs, the electromagnetic frequencies, and that can be from any source, like your refrigerator and they're the biggest contributor to EMF. But then all the cell phones and everything. So it's a concern, especially as our society is more and more wired. But one thing I want to recommend is, so we talked about lymph in the body, but the brain has lymph too. It's called lymph, and the brain detoxifies at night when we're sleeping. But if you have your Wi-Fi on at night, that signal is so strong that it interferes with your brain's detoxification. It can't detoxify if the Wi-Fi is on. So highly recommend, if you're able, where you live, to unplug it at night, just plug it back in the morning, and then because our dementia rates are rising, they're just escalating like crazy. And that's many different factors that contribute that, but certainly our EMFs are not helping at all, but just really unplug the Wi-Fi at night so that your brain detoxify. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's really, it is. And I thought I was safe out on the farm, and we have 5G in the rural areas. So Martin Pall, Pall, is a really good researcher if you want to know more about how EMFs impact our health. He's one of the premier researchers. So we'll wrap up. So I have a resource sheet for you, and then there's a bonus page that has things that I normally include in this talk, like that you can just read at your leisure. But now you have, where the toxins are, how to avoid them. You have great ways to move your lymph, bouncing, exercise, and minimize your time wearing a bra, and by all means, flush every day. So yeah, the ones that are really potent, baptisia and cloak, but you're not going to really encounter those if you don't visit an herbalist. But all the lymph moving ones I think are really safe. I don't feel Oh, thank you so much. So thank you. Rest of them, I have them up at the table, and I take cash, check their credit card.